accessory organs. And then lips, teeth, and tongue are accessory organs. So lips, teeth, and tongue, very important for digestion as well. Those are accessory organs. And then our pancreas down here is an accessory organ. So anything that's lying outside of that tube is an accessory organ. It's going to help us with digestion. So let's start up on top. All right, so we come in now, we have our lips, we have our teeth. This big thing is the tongue. That's often on the test. What is that? That's the tongue. We have our hard palate, made up by the palatine bone. And then we have the soft palate, the hanging downy part, the uvula. And the uvula closes, so when we eat food and drink liquids, they come down this pathway, and they don't go up to the nose. At the back of the throat, oropharynx, and then we're going to come down. That's the laryngopharynx that we did with the airway. And then we come into the esophagus. So the pharynx is continuous with the esophagus. Once we swallow, everything becomes involuntary. And then we go into the autonomic nervous system and peristalsis and gravity help push things. So we go down the esophagus, and that's just a tube, a conduction tube. And then we're going to come into the stomach. And the stomach is a storage tank, and it also helps break foods down with hydrochloric acid. So it's the beginning of breaking down process in the stomach. So chemical and mechanical again. And when we're looking at the stomach, let's see, the little smaller parts here. Yeah. So when we're looking at the stomach, the heart sits right here. So the top of the stomach is called the cardiac region. And where the tube from the esophagus goes into the stomach, there's a sphincter right there, which is just a muscle that opens and closes. And that stays closed and keeps the contents of the stomach here in the stomach. And when it's time to open, it opens. So that's called the cardiac sphincter. So this is the cardiac region right here. We call the top of the stomach the cardiac region. The opening is the cardiac sphincter. Then we have the body of the stomach, the main part of it. The outer curve is the greater curve. The inner curve is the lesser curve. So we have the cardiac region. The fundus is the big part up on top. The body is all of it with the greater and the lesser curve. And then the end is the pyloric region. Cardiac region up on top, pyloric region is the end. And again, we have a sphincter, and this time the sphincter is between the stomach and where it's going to next. And where it's going to next is this little curved part. That's the beginning of the small intestines, and that's called the duodenum, or duodenum, if you like to call it that. So there's a sphincter here, cardiac sphincter, and there's a sphincter here, pyloric sphincter. So the two doorways that are allowing stuff to come in the stomach and out of the stomach. And we need that to contain that strong hydrochloric acid in there, and we don't want it to come out until it's time to come out. And that's what heartburn is all about, because we have regurgitation back up into the esophagus, and that's why it burns so much in the heart region, heartburn. We have that strong acid going up into the esophagus. And the esophagus is lined with stratified squamous tissue to withstand friction because we're swallowing and chewing. It's not built to withstand pH of 2 hydrochloric acid. So that's why we get heartburn. And when we lay down, then it's easy, gravity's not working with us, it's easy for that fluid to regurgitate back up if that cardiac sphincter is not completely closed. So that's why you feel better if you're standing or if you lie on an angle, because you have gravity working with you. So probably, who hasn't had heartburn? You've never had heartburn? Okay. 1 out of 20 has never had heartburn. So we all know what that feels like. It's a very common problem. So that's the stomach. And then we transition into the small intestines. And the small intestines has 3 parts. The first part is the duodenum, and it's this little loopy part right here. Then we get into the darker color here, that's the jejunum. And then we get into the lighter color, that's the ileum. So it goes D-J-I. Duodenum, jejunum, and ileum. The jejunum and ileum are both the loopy parts. On this model, we can see where they're separated, but it's a continuous thing. And then finally, it empties up into the large intestines. So the part that connects to the large intestines, that's the ileum. The duodenum, little curve here, the jejunum, the loopy part. Also, the lighter loopy part is the ileum. So you can tell the difference between them because the ileum attaches to the large intestines. The jejunum attaches to the duodenum. So altogether, that's about 30 feet of intestines. The small intestines makes up a bunch of little areas that make up 30 feet. That's pretty incredible, isn't it? The other notable thing about the duodenum is it's the transition from the stomach to the small intestines. But we have that little hole right there, it's a dark spot. That's called the hepato, having to do with the liver. Pancreatic, having to do with the pancreas. Ampulla, an opening. So what happens is the small intestines is where we have absorption going on. Small intestines for absorption. The liver is going to drain into the duodenum. The pancreas is going to drain into the duodenum. So we have bile draining down right there, and we have pancreatic stuff draining over here. The pancreas is this big orange part, and it's coming down the pancreatic duct. So we have insulin, we have glucagon, we have all kinds of enzymes. One of those would be lipase to break down ACE. ASE is an enzyme to break down fats. So they're both going to secrete into that little area, and then that helps us be able to absorb the things that we need to be able to absorb. So it's called the HPA, hepatopancreatic pancreas. So they both drain into that loopy section of the small intestine.
It's called the HPA.
HPA, hepatopancreatic pancreas.
And it goes into the
Duodenum.
duodenum.
It's easier to spell if you say duodenum.
Right?
Yeah. All right. Other questions? So pancreas tucked up underneath the stomach. Over to the side is our spleen, another accessory organ that helps recycle red blood cells. So we're going to reclaim the iron that we need. There's a spleen over there on the left-hand side. Then we go into jejunum, ileum, small intestines, so absorption is happening there. And then we're going to transition from the small to the large intestines. So another valve is here. Up here, pyloric sphincter. Down here, we have this circular part. That's the first part of the large intestines called the cecum. So we have an ileocecal valve. That's how we get from small to large intestines. Ileocecal valve. This little guy down here, that's our appendix, called the viriform appendix, worm-like. Viriform means worm. So that's our appendix. It's like our tonsils. It's part of the lymphatic system. It's going to catch any bacteria, debris, whatever, and it's going to try to prevent it from going any further throughout our system. So just like our tonsils capture stuff when it first comes in, the appendix captures stuff in the lower intestines. And that's dangerous if it becomes inflamed, because if it ruptures, it's going to spew all throughout the small intestines, all throughout the large intestines, and all that bacteria and fecal matter is going to go all throughout, and you can become septic, and it's really hard to overcome that. So you get this infection all throughout your body. So that's why they'll do an emergency appendectomy, or if it's already ruptured, that's a life-threatening situation. That's a 911 deal, and they go in and do surgery, do the best they can, get you on antibiotics, and try to get that under control. So all that little guy. So just like our tonsils, we can live without them. They're just another part of the immune system. If they become more of a problem than a helper, then that's when we'll take it out. So it hangs down right there. Now we're in the large intestines. Cecum is the beginning, this brown part. Cecum is the beginning of the large intestines. And now we're into elimination. We can live without our large intestines. Our large intestines makes life much more comfortable for us. So pretty much at this point, we've absorbed everything we need to. There's still gonna be a little bit of back and forth with that, but mostly now we're eliminating. So the cecum, large intestine, starts going up, ascending colon, transverse, we're missing that, must be laying out here somewhere. Transverse colon goes across between these two, kind of loops down. We have the descending colon. We turn the corner, that's the sigmoid colon, where we make that S turn. Rectum, and then out the anus. That's the large intestine. Cecum, ascending, transverse, descending, sigmoid, rectum, and anus. And then the anus has two sphincters as well, the internal and the external, just like when we talked about the bladder. The internal is involuntary. We get that feeling of pressure, and it says time to go to the bathroom, time to vacate for stuff. And then we're in control of the external, so we can go where we need to go. And that's the digestive tract from start to finish. All right, so not too bad, pretty straightforward. So you guys take a minute, look at the this one, get familiar with it. And that, as far as testing purposes, that's pretty much a straight identification. So just know your parts from top to bottom. All right.
We're going over that. We're going to go over this with you again. If you want to record, we're going to go over this again.
Questions before I go over it again? I know you guys are labeling your pictures here. So we're going to come in the mouth, that's the beginning of the digestive system. Lips, teeth, and tongue. Hard palate up on top. That turns into the soft palate. So that's the uvula, the hanging down part. We'll open our mouth and say ah, that's the uvula. They go down the throat. Oropharynx behind the mouth. Laryngopharynx. Lobes of the liver. We have the big right side, and we have the left side. And separating them is the falciform ligament. That's what suspends the liver in there. We have a right lobe and a left lobe. What's this big blue vessel? Inferior vena cava. So on the back of the liver, hepatic artery is in there, hepatic vein is in there. And then what's the green stuff going to be? Bile ducts, right. So we have the gallbladder tucked inside the liver there. The gallbladder is a storage tank for bile. And it's going to store bile and then it's going to come out. So we call that the cystic duct because the word for bladder is cyst, C-Y-S-T, cyst is bladder. So that's called our cystic duct coming off the gallbladder. That's why I've drawn up here on the board. We'll label that. If you don't have your gallbladder, how are you going to make bile? Because lots of women get their gallbladder taken out. We have right and left hepatic ducts tucked up into the liver. They make like a V or a Y, and they're going to drain down the hepatic duct. And then all three ducts are going to come together. The cystic duct, the right and the left hepatic duct are going to come together and form the common bile duct. And that's what drains down into the duodenum, the hepatopancreatic cancer. So we have three little ducts up there, and that's what this picture is here. So you can draw this picture. This is our gallbladder. And it's going to secrete bile down the cystic duct. Cyst means bladder. We have our left hepatic. Right left hepatic duct. And then they're going to come together and make the common. We have three ducts draining from the liver. The gallbladder has its own cystic duct. If you don't have your gallbladder, you can still make bile, but you're not going to have a place to store it. So you're going to have to significantly decrease your fatty food intake because you don't have a reserve. You only have what you have at the time. You can't go back and rely on the gallbladder. So right and left hepatic ducts, where the three come together is the common bile duct. Or sometimes we are called a common hepatic duct. Then we're going to drain down into the HPA, which is in the duodenum. this is our pancreas. The dotted line, pancreatic duct. So pancreatic stuff is also going to drain into the HPA, hepato, liver, pancreatic, pancreas, ampulla, and over. So bile is draining down. Bile helps us break down fats. And then pancreas stuff is draining, and that's going to help us break things down. We have lots of enzymes in there, lipase, for example, breaking down fats. We talked about salivase with the salivary glands, and obviously insulin, glucagon. So things are going to drain into the small intestines. And then we get into all the loopiness of the small intestines when we have absorption. So that's the liver stuff. All on that first page, those are all the ducts that we know. So we have right lobe, we have left lobe, inferior vena cava. If we turn it around and look inside, we have all that stuff. There's our falciform ligament, that white thing. The green thing is the gallbladder. And we have two more lobes underneath. Living next to the gallbladder is what we call the quadrate, Q-U-A-D, quad, because it's in the shape of four sides. And then up on this side by the vena cava is the caudate lobe. We have a total of 4 lobes, right and left lobes. If we look inside, gallbladder with the quadrate lobe and the caudate lobe. Caudate lives by the vena cava, inferior vena cava. Quad lives by the gallbladder. And then the vessels we're going to have, if it's green, it's bile. So gallbladder, cystic duct, right and left hepatic duct. They're going to come together to make the common duct, and they're going to drain down here. The other vessels, red for arteries, blue for veins, hepatic artery, hepatic vein, and bile duct. So guess what we just made there? 3 things called the portal triad. We have 3 things that are going to supply the liver: the artery, the vein, and the bile duct. So that's called the portal triad: the hepatic artery, hepatic vein, and bile duct. Okay, what makes up the liver cells are called hepatocytes, liver cells. And this model is a big inside view of what we're going to look at in the liver. So hepatocytes are the functional unit of the liver, just like nephrons are the functional unit of the kidneys. So we have functional units in here. And we have all of these hexagon-shaped cells. Each one of these little things, hexagon-shaped, is called a hepatocyte. That's what makes up the liver. And on the corner of those, we have that portal triad we just talked about. Hepatic artery, carrying oxygen-rich blood. Hepatic vein, carrying oxygen-poor blood. Bile duct, carrying bile. And then this yellow is lymphatics. We'll talk about that in another chapter. They're all going to drain towards this central vein. They're all going to drain towards that. So this portal triad lives on the corner of all of these hepatocytes. We have lots of portal triads on all the corners. They're all draining because the liver's function is detoxification, main function. So it's going to be a very vascular organ. And we have all of this draining to the middle, which is called the central vein. How they're going to get across, these blue octopus-looking things are called sinusoids. Remember, a sinusoid is a very open, porous bed. So they're all draining. The hepatic vein is draining through the sinusoids, the blue octopus, towards the central vein. How the bile is getting over there, draining, is through all these little green things called canaliculi. And then the artery is draining. So this is a picture of the liver looking inside. It's made up of hepatocytes, 6-sided cells. On the corner, we have the portal triad, the artery, the vein, the bile duct. There's also lymphatics in there. They're all going to drain towards the central vein. And they go through the sinusoids. If it's blue, the veins are going through the sinusoids. If it's green, they're going through the canaliculi. And all this is on page 107. So let's look at page 107. So it says identify the growth structure, microscopic structure of the liver. We have some slides back there. The four lobes, we did that. Right, left, caudate, and quadrate. We did that. Input vessels, we have the hepatic portal vein, hepatic artery, and the bile duct. Then it lists what they're carrying there. The hepatic vein is going to have nutrient-rich blood. The hepatic artery is going to have oxygen-rich blood. And the hepatic duct, obviously, the bile duct is carrying the bile. And those three things make up the portal triad. Those are going to be on every corner of that hexagon. So we have lots and lots and lots of portals going in. And then the model, what we looked at there, microscopic anatomy, we looked at the model there. We have the liver is made up of our hexagonal hepatic cells, L1. L2, L3, and L4 make up the portal triad, the artery, the vein, and the bile duct. L5, the sinusoids, the blue octopus. L6, the little green lens, the biocanaliculus. L7, the yellow one, that's our lymphatics. And then the great big blue one, L8, is our central vein. Everything's working towards that central vein. So sometimes the questions are, what does this carry? If it's the artery, oxygen-rich blood. If it's the vein, nutrient-rich blood. If it's the bile duct, bile. And then they're all draining towards the central vein. And that's what it's talking about in that paragraph below there. Then it says, towards the bottom, bile transport from the liver, beginning with the liver hepatocytes, liver cells, name the vessels and organs in which bile is stored. Where do we store bile? In gallbladder. So right down gallbladder. Once food comes on board, then the small intestines is working. So during active digestion, where are we going to find bile? In the small intestines. Because it's drained down here. The message comes on board, oh, here comes some food, we got to start digesting that and absorbing that. So during active digestion, bile is in the small intestines. During storage, it's in the gallbladder, it's just sitting there and waiting. Once the meal comes on board, we start draining it down to the small intestines. On page 107.
He was asking how the food is found during active digestion.
Where do we put the bile during digestion?
Small intestine.
Right, small intestine. We store it in the gallbladder. We use it in the small intestine. Everybody good with that idea? Okay. Then we're going to look at the microscopes back there. We have some pictures of those. We'll come back to that in a second. And then turn to page 108 and 109. We get to answer questions. Question 1. Name the major organs of the alimentary canal in sequence that you studied in lab, beginning with the mouth and going to the rectum. So that's what we had on page 105. So make sure you know the flow. How we move through here. Number 2, name the 3 salivary glands. What are they? Parotid, right, parotid on the cheeks, sublingual under the tongue, submandibular under the mandible.
So from superior to inferior, parotid, sublingual, and submandibular.
Correct. Number 3, the pyloric sphincter regulates the passage of food between what 2 things? It starts with the stomach, it dumps into the duodenum. Very good. The pyloric, that's the doorway from stomach to duodenum. Or they could say small intestines, because duodenum is part of the small intestine. Number 4, food in the esophagus just came from what?
Laryngopharynx.
Correct. Laryngopharynx. Or you can put pharynx, oropharynx, below that laryngopharynx, down into esophagus. So pharynx in general, laryngo specific.
Okay, so if they don't ask specifically for the tonic?
Pharynx. Number 5, list in order the structure bile salts would pass through from the site of manufacturing to the site of storage. And then number 6, list in order bile salts would pass through on the way to the small intestine. So we go gallbladder, storage tank, cystic duct, right and left hepatic ducts, common bile duct, HPA, duodenum.
Can you repeat that?
Gallbladder, GB, cystic duct, right and left hepatic, common bile duct, HPA, duodenum. The HPA is in the duodenum. So we're making the bile salts up in the liver, then we're going to store them. And that's what, 6 and 7, yeah. So we're making them in the liver, number 5, and then the flow from them is the same, gallbladder, cystic. Everybody good with that one?
What's number 7? Where are you at?
We haven't done that
Oh,
Number 7, food stuff from the esophagus first enters the what region of the stomach?
where are you at?
Cardiac, very good. Name 4 accessory organs.
The tongue, the teeth, the lips,
Tongue, lip, teeth, tongue, and that.
and pancreas.
Pancreas, liver,
gallbladder.
gallbladder, spleen. Yeah, great. Then our salivary ducts. Then number 9 is kind of a jinky picture there of what I drew up here on the board. So, I'll tell you the number and you can try to fill it in. Number 3 is pointing to the gallbladder. And then number 2 is the duct that's draining off of that, so that's cystic duct. This won't be on the test, they're just trying to get you to understand the flow. And then up above, we have the liver, the line number 1 pointing to the line would be
The common bile.
right and left hepatic ducts. Coming down into, you're right, the common bile duct. So kind of above number 1, right and left hepatics, below number 1, common bile duct. Number 5, pancreas. Number 4, pancreatic duct, coming across. And it's kind of out of a line there, but they're all going to drain into number 6, the HPA. So that's just their diagram of this picture right here.
I didn't catch 5.
Pancreas. Number 10, name 1 digestive accessory organ that lies anterior to the stomach and 1 that's posterior. We already talked about those. Salivary glands, lips, teeth, and tongue, superior. Liver, gallbladder, superior to the stomach. And then pancreas is inferior. Pancreas and spleen, inferior. So number 8, look at your stuff that you wrote down in number 8. Side that's superior, inferior. And then 11, see if you can put those in order. List the sequence stuff would pass through the digestive tract. You guys work on that for a minute. Here you go. Okay, take a minute. If you haven't done it already, take a minute and do it. Yeah, number 2, 4, 2,
You know, I was taking a month for me to get the memory card from Amazon. Oh.